7 o'clock, which brings us to the 26th September 2018 County Planning Commission meeting. And the first item of business at 7 o'clock is roll call. Roll call, Pat, please.
Carl Kressinger.
Here.
Jeff Goodall.
Here.
Butch Becker.
Here.
Don Kettering.
Here.
Deborah Bodenstedt.
Here.
Zane Williams. Jared Koenig.
Here.
Dan Gutmiller.
Here.
Michael Wells.
Yes.
Quorum present.
Do we have a motion to approve the agenda as written?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
I'll second that.
Yeah, first and second over here.
Motion by me, second by Carl, I guess was first.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, tonight at 7:05, we'll have an item coming up. So, as we've done in the past, if you want to speak as a proponent or for this project, then you will come up and address the podium with your name, address, and proximity to the location as defined. If you're an opponent, you'll do the same. Come up, name, address, and proximity to where you live, your proximity to the location. The other thing is that when we get into this, we're gonna have the presentation of the project, and then we will ask for how many proponents, and then that number of people, 30 minutes divided by that number of people will give each person that many minutes to state their point. We go to the opponents, it'll have 30 minutes divided by that number of people to state their point. And at the end of that, the applicant will have 10 minutes of rebuttal to address any questions or concerns. And that time, it'll be closed to public comment. It'll be moved back to the Planning Commission for further discussion and then decision on where it heads after that. And then one thing also, there's a sign-up sheet right by the door. At the end of the meeting, there's a public comment period that was enacted by the South Dakota Legislature effective 1 July 2018. If you want to address the Planning Commission with no specificity towards this particular issue, then you can. It is not a vendetta against anyone, no personal attacks or anything else. Just you want to bring up a point or maybe a question, and then you'd have 3 minutes to do that. That will be after all items of the meeting, with the exception of the adjournment. It is so. We have 2 more minutes before the project in question comes up. So one thing is, you know, as everyone has the right to have their opinion, but, you know, we do not want any personal attacks, and I think that's important, and we'll go from there. And we have 2 minutes, so we'll follow the clock. Okay, it's 7:05. Mr. J. Cutts, as applicant, is requesting a conditional use permit to build a Class E 2,400 head, 960 animal unit pork finisher swine over 55 pounds production barn in the agriculture district in Yankton County. The applicant is requesting a variance of minimum right-of-way setback requirement from 330 feet to 150 feet and minimum property line setback requirement from 660 feet to 75 feet in the agriculture district in Yankton County. Said property is legally described as southeast 1/4, southeast 1/4, section 19, township 94 north, range 54 west, hereinafter referred to as Ballin Township, county of Yankton, state of South Dakota. The 911 address is to be announced 307th Street, Mission Hill, South Dakota. Mr. Cutts, if you'd like to present your proposed project or a representative.
We've been through this before. I think we meet all the criteria for section 519 for this particular project. We've given Pat all the information for that, and we'll do all the things that are required of us as far as stormwater permit and all the applications and stuff like that. And as far as going to that, then we go into the section 10 as far as the manure management application that we have. That's all done and in Pat's hands, and we should have covered most everything in that item in section 10. It's the same as the other barns. We plan on doing a good job with this one also. So as far as the conditional use permit, I think we meet all those criteria. Where we're going to have an issue tonight is with the variance. And why am I back here asking for a variance again? That's an interesting question. I wanted to put, after you guys told me to go back and rethink this, I wanted to put it in a different place, and I've tried to work with Pat and tried to explain to him how to work through this one where I wanted to put it, but it's in a floodplain. And Pat says, no, I can't do it there. I said, yes, but it hasn't flooded since 1952. He says, I don't care. You can't put it in a floodplain. So that's why we're here again tonight for this conditional use permit and variance. Now, in doing my long-range plan, this really isn't pertaining to the building permit or anything, but you guys need to know why I want to put a barn here. It's my job in my business is to think 10, 15 years down the road. As far as I'm concerned, this barn is part of a sustainability project for me that gives me organic fertilizer to use on my crops, so I don't have to be so dependent on commercial fertilizers and the costs that are associated with those. It's my feeling in time that this barn would be a beneficial use for me, and down the road, my sons, if they decide to take over and decide they want to go organic, which is where things are headed nowadays, I believe, it would give them a heads up on, or a leg up on, organic production in this area. One of the things with organic production is it needs fertilizer, and you have to have fertilizer, so you got to get fertilizer somewhere, and these would be the base for an organic operation at some point in time. The two barns I have already will cover part of my farm. Just happens to be where I grew up and live and happened to buy my first few pieces of ground. are all on the floodplain. 53% of the farm that I farm, the ground I farm, is all in a floodplain. Pat says I can't put a barn anywhere in a floodplain. So this is the nearest piece of property I have to everything that it is in a floodplain to utilize to put a barn in. The reason I'm asking for as much of a variance as I am is because on this piece of property, that is probably the best place to put the barn as far as topography is concerned. Can we move it further away from the neighbor's right-of-way? Yes, we can. The further east we move it, moves it closer to a neighbor, which I would rather not do, and it moves it closer to the floodplain, which I would rather not do. And as far as variance granted in the past, you guys have granted 2 variances real close to this piece of property. One for the Hanson Brothers homestead not too long ago, where they requested the CUP to go from 20 acres to approximately 4.7 acres. And also, you did one in Mission Hill, or on the north edge of Mission Hill, in an ag district also, where they went from 20 acres down to 2.4 acres, 2.6 acres. So those were very large variances also. And so I will also ask you to consider that too. Other than that, I think that pretty much explains why I'd like to have it there. Like I said, if you feel that we need to move it further away from the property line, I would be agreeable to that. As it is now, I'll already say that this isn't in my plan, but I plan on planting trees on the north side and east side of this barn to mitigate the wind and odor. It is an open curtain barn. It's a natural vent barn. And as far as I'm concerned, after building one and being inside it and remembering what hog yards were like and different barns are like or have been like over the years, this is, to me, about the best example of an open lot hog barn where the pigs can have ventilation and everything else that's also heated and with a roof to keep them cool. So I think it's very beneficial for the livestock also.
Can you use the pointer and show us and the audience where this barn would be located?
This barn would be located approximately right there. And if we move it further this way, basically this brown area, black area here you see here, that is the floodplain. So we can move it down towards the floodplain more if you think we need to get it away from this property line. Now, this is an ag district. It's always going to be an ag district. I hope it stays an ag district. And this is bare land all the way around it, except for this house here. And these are all at least a quarter mile away. I think if my map reads right, it's over 1,400 feet away.
Is that one piece of property that's right next to the one over?
This one?
That one?
No, that is not mine.
That's not yours.
Yep.
What's the topography like there from the road going north?
Here,
Yeah.
the topography here is about level with the,
Just wiggle
the topography here is about level with the road.
So
From
can you go
here,
further- Can you go further north or not?
can we go further north? We could, but then that gets into,
Oh, I see.
see, I want to stay as far away from my neighbors as I can. And that's one of the issues with this.
And south of that line, you don't own that property?
I own this here, I own this piece of property right here.
What's the matter with that?
This is a floodplain right here.
On the left, move to the,
It also has a pivot on it, right there, that would hit. And this is a fairly steep hill, right here, that won't, you'd have to do a lot of dirt work to make that work. And this down here on this piece of ground is too low to park it here. That I wouldn't want to do either.
Is that also where the floodplain path?
It kind of runs over the road a little bit. Yes, in this corner right here, I would say is in the floodplain. Okay.
Is that a waterway or something there in the northwest corner?
In the northwest corner, yes, that's a waterway, a fairly steep waterway.
This particular floodplain also coordinates with what we call the Bonham lateral number 1. And that is right here underneath the stream. So just to show you, whoops, excuse me. Okay, so there's your stream. That's the designated stream. Starts up in here, goes down here, and then the designated ditch that's in this country here that's actually levied is right here. And then goes up along this way for drainage.
And there's
And the
one piece of it
floodplain
goes straight south too?
goes to the east. Excuse me?
Is that part of it goes?
This here?
Yeah,
Yeah, this is the drainage into the ditch.
okay.
This purple line is into the ditch. This flows north here into the ditch, flows south and east here into the ditch.
So if I understand you correctly, you own the section immediately south of the currently proposed.
Correct.
So is there anybody living in that?
I don't own this piece right here where the house is at,
That is a residence.
but yeah, it is a residence.
We measured the distance. I think the site plan shows the actual number, how far away that is.
And have you spoken to your neighbors?
After our last time, I talked to the neighbors that own this piece of property and this piece of property here.
Are they the same?
Yes, yes. They own this, this, and this over here. And that right there. Had very good conversations with them, explained my views and why I wanted to do this project, and tried to explain why I thought it was good for the community and the local community, and how it would affect my operation. And left with no clear reasoning, but they just say they still want to oppose it.
If you went to across the road, could you build that hog barn on your, that property?
No, I'm too
there?
close to here. I don't meet the quarter-mile setback
To that farm?
to that farmstead.
so what you're saying is that the almost white color area,
Right.
that's about the only place you can.
That's about the only place I can build it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Somewhere, anywhere along that white area. Like I said, and the further I move here, it gets to about right here, about halfway down, then it starts dropping off. So,
Which side has the 660-foot?
this would be the property line right here that has a 660-foot setback.
Then the other one's,
150 is the right-of-way along this road.
We actually, the north property line too,
That's true too. This one up here too
is a 660.
is a 660.
There's nothing at all then on the one to that one there.
This one? No, this is bare ground.
Just flat bare ground.
What, excuse me?
That's owned by Hanson's?
Yes, the Hanson brothers, yes. And this also is bare ground owned by the Hanson brothers.
So you wouldn't be exposing that particular area do the smell everybody claims to be?
Well, there's nobody that lives there. You know, and these guys are absentee landowners. They don't live in Yankton County. LaRue has just moved back into Yankton, I should say. The other two brothers, one lives in Sioux Falls, and I think Mylan's here tonight. So.
All right.
Any other questions? Thank you.
First off, how many proponents or people that would be in favor?
Pro.
That's what I said.
Yeah.
Proponents. I said people in favor of this project. How many proponents do we have for this project?
Who would like to speak?
Who would like to speak? Like an auction, going once, going twice. Okay, we have two proponents, so you guys can each have up to 15 minutes each. You don't have to use that, but you're allowed up to that. So the total time for proponents is 30 minutes. So right now we have two proponents. That divides out to 15 minutes each. And we might as well figure out the opponents at this time also. How many opponents would we have that would want to speak? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we have 6 opponents, so they will each get 5 minutes each. So we'll start with your proponents. Come up, state your name, address, and how far you reside from this project, and then make your case.
Good evening. My name is Len Peterson. I live here in Yankton, and I'm not exactly sure how many miles I am from, but I'm within the city limits here in Yankton. Jay said something that was very accurate when he talked about the condition of agriculture today financially. I work in the banking business. I'm not financing anything to do with Jay on this project, so don't misunderstand any of that. But I do understand the economics of agriculture, and it is in tough shape. We in the banking business, I would guess to say that we might see 25 to 35% of our customers not cash flow this year. We have a tremendous amount of customers that do come to us looking for new sources of income, income that makes sense to them, income that they can provide to their family so they can keep them on the farm and keep them going. There's hog barns where you can do the work yourselves, and there's hog barns where you can hire it done. In almost every single instance, we've had individuals coming into the bank wanting to do the work themselves. Why do they want to do the work themselves? They want to have pride of ownership. They want to manage the barns the way their neighbors would want them to manage their barns, and they're getting every last dollar they can out of it. They're keeping that money in their pocket and not giving it to somebody else to manage it for them. I'm not saying that's in every case. I'm just saying that in most every case, that's what they're doing. That's not, they're looking for sources of income is my point. These barns do create economic opportunities. There's about a half a section of corn per year that will go into each barn. I guess I call that value added. If we're growing the corn, if we're growing the soybeans, and we can use that product before we send it out of the state of South Dakota or out of the county or wherever it is, it creates absolute economic opportunities. We have veterinarians, we have the trucking industry, we have the power companies, we have the builders, the contractors involved. It does create economic opportunity. I have numbers that I can share, and I'll punt over that at this time as far as the actual economic numbers. The two last points I want to make: we're living right now in the city of Yankton with 4,000 to 5,000 head of cattle about a half mile from us. right here at Stockman's Livestock, from Sunday and through Thursday, there is anywhere from 4,000 to 5,000 head of cattle that are in the city of Yankton. We don't notice it. We smell it. The people in town smell it? Yes. Has it been a bother? No. Does Stockman's create a huge economic opportunity? Yes, it does. Stockman's also has an open pit lagoon just to the south of their plant, or their livestock facility. Less than 1.1 mile from the city limits, there's a number of other, 1.1 mile to the north, 1.8 miles, I believe, to the, I probably better not guess, and I probably should just read, 1.8 miles to the north of the city, one lot 2 miles straight west of Fox Run Golf Course, one lot southwest of the city, and another lot 3.5 miles southeast of the city in Nebraska. Combined, these feedlots are qualified for, I think, 35 to 40,000 head of livestock, of cattle. And each and every single one of these yards does have cattle on their property at some point in time. I'm not saying that there's 35,000 head there today, but we have agriculture all the way around the city of Yankton, and it has not posed any problems. I know that hogs are different than cattle. I understand that. The way the application process of how these guys have to handle their manure and have a licensed agronomist help them apply it, and to require when they can apply it, where they can apply it, and checking the weather to make sure that it doesn't cause runoff, all of it being knifed into the ground. I think the practices are safe. We have approximately, as of the last ag census, 10,000 head of hogs, as of the last ag census being 2012. The numbers are dated, yes they are, but it's the best and most accurate that we have that I'm aware of. Sioux County, Iowa has 1.1 million head of hogs. Do I want 1.1 million head of hogs? No, I do not. I've never, ever, ever said that think that we need 1.1 million head in Yankton County, but I think we have room for more hogs. We have room for economic opportunities for these farmers to build barns and create income to stay on the farm. Last point I want to make is the safety and the health issues. Some time ago, a local doctor had put an article in the paper, and I'll quote it. The toxic chemicals, bacteria, and dander spewed into the air by CAFOs will increase the number of children that developed asthma if they live or go to school within 3 miles of a CAFO. Imagine all of the elderly who would suffer from COPD and other respiratory illnesses because of exposure to the same toxic air. So I looked into this. I went to the Iowa Department of Health, American Lung Association, National Rural Health Resource Center, and the CDC, and compared Sioux County, Iowa to Yankton County. Again, Sioux County being a large hog producing county, Yankton County one of the smallest in South Dakota. I found the 2010 census information, and again, the latest information at that time. Compared Sioux County, Iowa to Yankton County. Sioux County pediatric asthma rate is 1.6%. Yankton County pediatric asthma rate is 1.9. So we're actually higher. Sioux County adult asthma rate is 5.9%, and Yankton County is 5.9%. So we're even. COPD rates in Sioux County are 4.4%, and Yankton County is 4%. So I think this information speaks. My point is that I would never stand up here and promote something if these numbers were way out of whack. If it proved that we would have a COPD or childhood asthma issues, I would sound an alarm and let everybody know, hey, there is something here. But from what I'm seeing, there isn't. So that is really all I wanted to make a point of.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so the next proponent, if you want to step forward, name, address, how close you live to this proposed facility.
I'm Brad Hohen with MDS Manufacturing. I'm out of Parkston, so I guess I don't know the exact mileage, but just want to talk a little bit about a couple of things that you may have questions on and offer myself to answer questions if you have some later in the meeting. First of all, I want to visit about the building a little bit. Again, Jay's facility, and I am working with Jay. I work with many producers, so and there's other people that do the same thing. So, but Jay's building is a naturally ventilated facility, and I know you've heard a lot about those, and you've heard a lot about different methods of doing things, tunnel ventilation, cross ventilation, all sorts of it. I just want to stress to you that really that comes down to a choice. It's not that somebody builds one building because it is cheaper and gets some skates and by and does this or that differently or better. At the end of the day, all of these structures that I mentioned will raise livestock effectively. Whether you have 2,400 head of animals in a naturally vented curtain-sided barn or in a tunnel ventilated barn or a cross ventilated barn, your emissions will be the same. Okay, putting them in an enclosed environment does not cure anything that's coming off these animals. I mean, it's just livestock is, I don't think anybody stood up here and told you livestock does not have an odor. It sure does. There are things that they are doing to mitigate those odors nowadays, and for several purposes. One, to be that more environmentally friendly neighbor as far as with the, like I'll talk about natural ventilated barns or any of them with the manure. They're treating the manure, and that it does help reduce the odor. It also makes the manure more valuable because there really is value in that. It's fertilizers. It's natural organic nutrients. So, but I just want to just touch on the fact that yet they're not putting up a curtain-sided barn because it's a way less expensive unit to go with and things like that. That's only one consideration cost. I mean, you work inside of a naturally ventilated barn. It's like being outside. You know, it's as close to putting the animals outside that what everybody says they want you to do. Well, that's what we're doing. We're opening up the curtains. We're ventilating across them. We're giving them animal sunlight. You know, all those things to keep them in as good a health as possible. That can be done in tunnel ventilated barns as well. But it's just, again, it's a choice. Also want to talk about runoff. How we constantly hear about runoff. Well, I'm sure you folks and several of you understand that the hog manure is not the only thing in the world that could ever run off. If these folks aren't applying organic nutrient to their land, they're going to be applying commercial fertilizer. And I would tell you that I think knifed-in fertilizer will stay in place a whole lot better in any weather condition than would a top-dressed fertilizer. So, again, we're trying to do something that's better, incorporating the land. Now, can there be, you know, when you apply it, you're injecting, when you stop and start, if a guy doesn't stop the pump quite soon enough, or can there be a little bit of top that'll absorb it initially? Sure, that's possible. The other thing is that the organic fertilizer is much better for the ground because it's not just about the NPK. There's other micronutrients in there that are better for that land and will continue to improve the land for the producers on the road. And last but not least, like Lynn talked about, it is a profit center for Jay and his family and for all the producers that are looking at doing it. It's a tough world out there. I see the other side of my business, we work with loader attachments. We build those kind of things. I can tell you in the last 10 years, that side of that business has declined probably 30%, and it's due directly to what you've seen in the super cycles going on in agriculture. So these guys are looking for other opportunities that they can stay on the land, bring their kids back, and you know, quite honestly, it's a darn good thing to put. Anytime you can put grain through hooves versus rubber tires, it is a benefit to the entire community and all the people around it. So everybody may not agree with that, but at the end of the day, it truly is. So thank you for your consideration of this project.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll now go to the opponents. So we will have 5 minutes each opponent. And there's 6, so it's kind of like barbershop style. Remember where you are. When you come up, state the name, address, proximity to the project, and we'll start with number 1.
I am Mylan Hanson. I live in Kansas City, but my two brothers and I, LaRue was also mentioned as he lives in the neighborhood. He lives in Yankton. We own then the property we've been talking about on the north and the west side of that. And that has been in our family. It was my great-grandfather that homesteaded it. So it's been in our family for over 100 years, and we intend to keep it. We're opposed to changing the variance. We see no reason to, or change the setback, I mean. We see no reason to introduce a different variance, period. And it's also, you can see on that, to the east, there was a kind of a dark area.
Just move the mouse, please.
There we go. Kind of on the east side, that dark side, that often is wetland. And I noticed, I drove in tonight, I drove by and looked, and there's no crops really growing on that section. And that kind of extends up into that little bit of dark north of us. We lose crops there too every once in a while. I don't remember it as much as it's been in the last 3-4 years. I don't know if rain patterns, more, just water put on crops and stuff is changing, but it seems like we've lost a little bit more cropland from that, and I also see that coming down into the little corner of the J. So we just oppose it.
Thank you. Number 2. Are you guys number 2, or were you both opponents?
Yeah.
Yep.
So you each get 5 minutes each.
Okay, my name is Andrea Whitmire. I live at 30674 447th Avenue, Mission Hill, which is the house northeast of where Jay would like to put the barn.
In the center
Can
of
you
that
point on
section.
it? It's the one in the yellow box.
Mouse pointer.
This guy right there, that's where I live. 27, I guess I should say I oppose the applicant's proposed hog confinement. 2017 was not my best year. I had a significant number of health issues and ended up in the hospital for several days to be under observation and undergo treatment. After getting out of the hospital, I had several appointments with my specialist doctor to start getting things under control. The treatment for my condition makes me immunocompromised, meaning my immune system is a lot weaker than the average person. Therefore, I can pick up infections easily and have a hard time fighting them off. That was shown this past summer as I was unable to work for 3 weeks. I also had another month where I could work, but was not able to do my full job. To date, I still go home quite often from work due to my condition. As of right now, I have everything under control. That does not mean it could be different if the hog confinement is built. Due to this fact, I do not agree with the hog confinement the applicant is trying to obtain. If the hog confinement is built and is operational, the 150 pathogens from hog manure will blow into our yard and our home. Due to being immunocompromised, I will most definitely get infections from these pathogens, making me not able to work and also causing additional medical costs, which will burden my household. Being sick means I will not be able to go to work, leading to not being paid or able to contribute to bills and groceries. Kind of like what I'm sorry, I don't remember your name, but he mentioned it is a hard world, and this would cause a lot of hardship on our family if, this does happen. Being unable to work takes away my contribution to the household. This will cause an economic hardship within my home, like I just said. You cannot grant a conditional use or variance when a hardship is created by the variance or conditional use itself. In Section 1807 of the Yankton County Zoning Ordinance, it specifically states a variance may not be granted if the authorization of such variance will be of substantial detriment to adjacent property. I'm here today to tell you that forcing us to move off of our property is substantial detriment. Granting this variance and conditional use permit for this proposed hog barn will also cause us to suffer substantial economic hardship. The reason being is due to loss of property value that will occur when you force us to move, so I do not get sick all the time. If this is not an economic hardship, I'm not sure what is. When we received our letter originally for the meeting, September 11th, we were looking for that permit sign. I'm going to be honest, I drive by it every day where that hog barn is supposed to be going. And we noticed that the sign was not posted until September 6th, 2018, 5 days before the original scheduled Yankton County Planning and Zoning meeting was. According to Article 18, Section 1803, Paragraph 5 of the Yankton County Zoning Ordinance, a notification sign should be posted on the property upon which action is pending at least 7 days prior to the hearing date. The criteria was not met, which would not have allowed the application to be reviewed on September 11th. And due to unknown reasons, we weren't able to make the meeting. We were out of town. The meeting for said application was postponed to today. This makes me skeptical that the reason the meeting was pushed back may be due to the ordinance not being met for the original date. This also leads me to question, if we can't get the ordinance down by putting the sign up to just get the permit, that makes me leery that the applicant may not be able to meet the guidelines of the Yankton County Zoning Ordinance, Article 5, Section 519. Landowners around the proposed hog confinement site still do not approve of the variance requested. This was the reason for the variance to be denied in January 2018. On September 26th of 2018, this should be the same reason for the variance to be denied again. Thank you for your time.
Okay, so then we'll go into Mr. Gramco. We'll go ahead and start your 5 minutes.
Brendan Gramco. I live at the same place, married to Andrea. We live approximately a quarter mile away from the proposed location. This application, I'm opposed to this conditional use and the request for variance. The reasons are for opposing this are due to the health implications for my family, the substantial detriment of property loss, and illegal variance request. Within Section 519 of the Yankton County Zoning Ordinance, it states that new AFOs and CAFOs must be set back 660 feet from a property line and 330 feet from a right-of-way line. It states that P&Z Commission and/or Board of Adjustment may mandate setbacks greater than those required to further the intent of the zoning ordinance and protect the public health and safety. It does not state that variances of 90% and 55% of the setbacks can be granted. Do you realize that you can fit the entire barn and half of another barn within the variance that is requested? A variance of this size is not an administrative decision, but is a legislative decision and cannot be granted. The applicant cannot create his own hardship to request a variance, thus the floodplain request. The applicant was aware of the zoning ordinance, the required setbacks, and the floodplain when he purchased the property, just as I was aware when I purchased my property that the hog barn could not be placed in this location. Approving this conditional use permit, the variances will be in violation of the county ordinance. The Yankton County Zoning Ordinance states that the definition of a variance, that a variance may not be granted if it is contrary to the public interest or as a result of the actions of the applicant. This variance is contrary to the public interest and is most definitely a result of the actions of the applicant. The Yankton County Zoning Ordinance also states that a variance may not be granted if the variance would cause undue hardship or be of substantial detriment to adjacent property. I am here to tell you tonight that this CAFO and the variances will cause unnecessary economic hardship, extreme detriment, and undue hardship, and endanger the health and future of my family if you grant these variances and conditional use permit. You will force us to move from our property and incur undue hardship. Landowners around the proposed confinement site still do not approve of the variance requested, as they have testified to in January of 2018 and tonight. This testimony was the reason that the variance was denied and should be the same reason that it should be denied tonight. The facts presented tonight are more than enough for you to say no. All you have to do is say no to protect my family, our future, and our land and our rights. And we have spoken to several doctors, and it's not if she gets sick, it's when she gets sick. So I don't think that you should take that lightly.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
Do you own your property where you live?
Yeah.
The book hasn't just been updated, that's all.
It's wrong this year for some reason. It was right last year. Don't ask me why.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Number 4.
My name is Patty Gramco, and I oppose this CAFO.
Your name, address, and your proximity to the location?
I don't know how close I am. I'm 20 minutes away driving through the town.
Yes. So you at least know your address, right?
4313 Herman's Loop, Yankton, South Dakota.
And that is west of Yankton?
Yes. I also, we have stated before that I also have a financial interest in this. I have a question for Deb. Have you received any political campaign funds from the Port Council? Does the applicant have any signs anywhere near his property or on his property? The applicant stated that he is applying his fertilizer for nitrogen, which by the nutrient and environmental training program that I and several other people went to in Huron, they stated that you're not supposed to do that. They stated you're supposed to apply for phosphorus. The reason being is that when you put on for nitrogen, you're putting on so much phosphorus that you don't need to apply phosphorus again for up to 10 years. So yes, he needs the nutrients, but he's going about it all wrong. I also want you to be aware of a study that is going on between SDSU, the Southeast Research Farm, and James River Water Development District. The study is a real-time study. It is looking at the correlation between water runoff and the amount of rain, the nutrients contained in the water runoff and the amount of rain that lands. There is a direct correlation. Not only are the nitrates, the sulfides, the boron off the scale, which means they don't even know how much it is off the scale because the scale only tops out. So it's beyond that. I have some pictures to show you concerning the amount of rain, and I do want this put into the record, please. Picture number 1. Is the corner of 307 and 447. It's where the water does drain, and if you look between the two...
the mouse so we can see the map again. That white mouse there.
Right here.
Thank you.
There's a pointer there. Right
Yeah, I know there's a pointer there.
You can, the laser one has the silver one, you just point that, it has a red button.
Right in this corner, it flows into the ditch and goes under the bridge that is right at the corner. And incidentally, this is the start of Clay Creek, which I believe, Deb, you sit on the board.
Yankton Clay, yes.
This is how much water was there. That's a tremendous amount of water. That means that there was a tremendous amount of runoff. Maybe the camera gal can get this on the...
This was the heavy rain in June we had.
It's dated June 26, 2018. This is looking from Brendan and Andrea's driveway across the field. It's not just a little bit of pooling.
They're looking southwest.
You are looking
Basically due west.
southwest. No, you are looking southwest.
Straight towards.
If you had visited the site, you would know how this direction is. The next one is a rather interesting picture because right here you can see a fence line. The water had to be higher than the fence line. It also shows the slope, and it shows also that the water ran downhill to that corner. And lastly, here is just another picture of the abundance of water, the abundance of rainfall, and the abundance of nitrates, sulfides, and boron in the water. This shows also
There's 24 seconds left.
that the hog barn is very poorly sited.
Can I ask you a question? Where the water is not where he was planning to put it, correct? It was beyond that, but this is that wetland area that he's talking about?
Yes.
Okay.
Which also shows that the water runs downhill from where he is siting it. I just want to say that Yankton County no longer finds you guys trustworthy. They've lost confidence in
Thank
you.
you, Mr. Gramco. Obviously, when I figured out I was shutting my phone off, that you
I want this
had
in
your,
the record, please.
5 minutes.
Mr. Garrity?
All right, number 5.
Yes.
He's got, you got same copies?
We've got.
Yes.
Number 5, opponent.
Yeah, same copies.
Identical.
keep them all together.
So who has the pictures?
Don
They're
does.
over at the end there now.
At the end.
Way at the end.
Sir, your name, address, and proximity. to-
Good evening. My name is Paige Herrig. I live at 44628 308th Street. That's about an eighth of a mile north and a quarter mile east of downtown Mission Hill. And it's a mile south and about a quarter mile west of where this hog barn's going. And I'm opposed to the conditional use permit because the site plan deviates from the minimum setbacks established to protect the quality of life of county residents, as stated in Chapter 7 of the Comprehensive Plan. It fails to preserve individual property rights while promoting livestock production, as stated in Chapter 7 of the Comprehensive Plan. Section 105 of the zoning ordinance states that the provisions of the ordinance shall be held to be minimum requirements adopted for the promotion of public health, safety, morals, and general welfare. I believe the people of Yankton County deserve better than just the minimum. Furthermore, open curtain barns are not compatible with promoting public health or general welfare. Since I live roughly a mile from there, it's going to affect my life. Obviously, there's going to be an unpleasant odor, and maybe an unpleasant odor isn't so bad, but the point is the odor contains, the reason it smells is because of the toxic gases and the pathogens and the particulate matter. It's like going into a smoky bar and you come out and your clothes smell smoky. Well, that's from the particulate matter of the smoke. The particulate matter from the hog barn is, of course, dust that contains pathogens. And typically dust can travel, 20 miles. So I'm sure it can reach my place. The problem I have with that is that, I always have a big garden and fruit trees, and I got this habit of when I'm working outside, I'll eat, cherry tomatoes right off the vine and pull an apple off the tree and pick a handful of raspberries. But I won't be able to do that with hog barns all around me. That food needs to be washed first. But then, I guess if this hog barn goes in, I won't be working outside. I won't be able to do that. Another thing that several people have mentioned, economic hardships. And living that close, my property values are going to drop. People, if I don't want to live there, nobody else is going to want to live there. If nobody wants to live there, nobody's going to buy it. You don't have to be a banker to understand that if something can't be sold, it has no value. There's a lot of issues here for the people around. And I agree that Mr. Cutts has the right to do with his property what he feels like doing. But I think his rights end when they interfere with other people's rights. The right to health, the right to enjoy their property. I have nothing against Mr. Cutts. You know, it's like church. You love the sinner, but you hate the sin. I'm sure there's a lot of things that could be done to mitigate these problems. And we have to remember this application was already denied in January of this year. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Number 6.
Hi, my name's Christy Schultz. I live at 30445 Southwest Children River Road. I am approximately 4 miles as the crow flies, as well as the fly flies, and the mosquitoes fly, and the odor flies from this proposed hog barn. I would also ask that any time not used by the other people who were against this facility be allotted to me, since I am the last speaker on the docket.
We needed to negotiate that ahead of time.
Seriously?
Yes.
I thought this was America. All right, I guess I was mistaken.
It is America,
Okay.
but. Well, I didn't have a cumulative addition on it. I know we were down within 3 minutes of using up everyone else's time. So,
9 minutes.
in accordance with the Plan Commission member, I'll increase your time to,
We start at 35, so if you could have.
we'll give you eight
till
and a half
5
minutes.
after, yeah.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Okay, in reference to what the proponent, Lynn Peterson, said, he's still not a doctor. They can look up statistics all they want. And do we really want Yankton County to become worse in health issues than it is already? Because clearly we have issues because of the river and molds and allergens and other things that are already here. I really don't think we need to make that situation worse by adding more hog confinements to this area. Also, they keep touting that this manure is organic. It is not organic. They have no idea what additives have been put into that feed because these corporate hog confinements are vertically integrated. Everything comes to them on a truck. They don't buy their food. They don't buy their food locally. They get it on a truck from the corporation. They have no idea what's in that food. So they really can't certify it as organic when they have no idea what the hogs are eating. We have neighbors that have testified that this will affect their health directly. As you know, what happens to hogs when the fans stop running and the curtains are not open? They die. They die because the fumes coming off of these animals and from the manure are so toxic, they will kill the animals themselves. So what they're doing is they're blowing those fumes and the toxic gases and the pathogens and everything else out for the neighbors to breathe. I think we need to ask ourselves, who's more important, people or hogs? Section 1807 of the variances. It's been touted many times that you want to follow the letter of the law. The letter of the law says that in section 1807 of our ordinance, which is the law of the land, the authorization of such variance will not be of substantial detriment to adjacent property, and the character of the district will not be changed by the granting of the variance. Also, we have had testimony in the past from Mitch Peterson, who is an attorney who has successfully fought and won cases where they varianced a CUP. You cannot variance a conditional use permit. They talked about a variance earlier regarding a homeowner and a setback. That is not a conditional use permit. That was a simple variance. These two things are not the same. I served on the Planning and Zoning Board for 12 years, and save Butch Becker, that's longer than any of you have been here. I understand how these rules work. Conditional uses are not the same as variance. It also says in our ordinances, Section 1807D, the granting of such a variance is based upon reasons of demonstrable and exceptional hardship, as distinguished from variances for the purpose of convenience, profit, and caprice. The only person who profits from this, who benefits from this, is Mr. Cutts. Everyone else in the area is going to be affected by it in a negative way. There is nothing good about these. They do not promote economic development. As a matter of fact, they are a detriment to the district. They hurt the property values. They hurt people's health. They increase our health care costs of the public. You had testimony of people who are immune suppressed. They are already at a disadvantage health-wise, and they're very close to this permit. It has been denied once already. This is nothing different. The things have not changed. I ask that you deny this permit again. The commission shall further make a finding that the granting of such a variance will be in harmony with the general purpose and intent of this ordinance and will not be injurious to the neighborhood or otherwise detrimental to the public welfare. I'm just stating this again. It was stated earlier in the comments. And that again is straight from the variance, straight from our ordinances that we are required to follow. I also want to bring to your attention that should you grant this permit, you will incur upon the county more costs involved when the plaintiffs will take it to court, and then you'll have to spend money to fight it in court. It's already been denied once. It should be denied again. I would also ask that any and all CAFO permits that are brought before you in the future be required to have a performance bond. That's a security bond in the event that there is that they go out of business and they have to decommission the barn. There will be an environmental huge bill to be paid to clean up that site. Yes, don't look at me like that. It's happened over and over in Iowa. You'll see barns that have gone bankrupt and they just leave the mess and run.
Wind generators too.
Yep, we require that of wind generators, and just an ordinary cell tower, we require a performance bond for them, and they are not an environmental hazard. Recent flooding makes the need for berms of a correct material, height, and location to contain the results of catastrophic breach in manure pit. I would ask that that be put in place. You are certainly within your rights should you make the, in my opinion, incorrect or detrimental decision to accept this permit. I would ask that these conditions be added to it. A modern state-of-the-art facility must be required, an enclosed barn with properly installed and maintained biofilters. Biofilters can reduce harmful emissions by over 90% when maintained properly. Why should we accept an open curtain barn technology from the 1970s? They can do much better. A buffer strip of evergreen trees. He said he's going to plant trees. That is a good idea. Electrostatic fences to capture toxic particulate matter. This is already required by Iowa Select Farms. That's a hog producer in Iowa. Feed and manure pit additives to reduce odor. Mandatory air monitoring for hydrogen sulfide, ammonia, and methane. An effective means of insect elimination or control. Vectors can carry disease for miles. Groundwater monitoring at least 4 feet deep to detect pollution from an unknown or undetectable leak in the manure pit. It's underground. We won't know if it is leaking unless there is groundwater monitoring. There's already a requirement for that in Spink County. Why is Yankton County lagging behind? Semi-annual soil testing of manure application sites to a depth of 4 feet
30 seconds.
to detect potential pollution of shallow aquifers and neighboring wells. Extra notification for manure applications so residents will know what to expect and when. And I would ask that mandatory state CAFO training, because the applicant has no previous experience with large-scale feeding operations, and because this facility and others are being built by the applicant, will all use common areas and common systems for manure disposal, that this facility and the applicant's other facilities be considered a single animal feeding operation, and all should be registered with the South Dakota DENR. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Cutts, you have 10 minutes for rebuttal. And before Mr. Cutts, Mr. Gramkow, you stated that this would be an illegal variance. I just want to verify that you do not have a law degree.
No, but I have spoken to an attorney.
So right now, the right answer would be that you believe that it would be illegal, that it's not illegal, but you believe it would be illegal. I just want to make sure that you're not
You're not an attorney either.
I'm not, that's why I'm asking the questions I'm asking.
Well, he has consulted an attorney, isn't that the same thing?
No, it's not.
No, it's not.
Seriously.
So anyway,
Yes, that's the.
what Mr. Gramko presented was what his belief is. He does not have a license as an attorney. Mr. Cutts, if you want to do your rebuttal, you have 10 minutes.
Okay, well, I'm going to start with an ag district and what the intent of an ag district is. I think that's what the main question here is, and we may not like that I raised 2,400 hogs in one place. We might want it to be 100 head of hogs, or 200 head of hogs, or 1,000 head of hogs. Where do we put that number, and why do we put it there? I mean, it's an arbitrary number, and I decided to raise 2,400 head of swine finishers. But the intent of the ag district, and this is from the zoning ordinance, when I'm quoting something, I always read straight out of the ordinance, I don't paraphrase it. The intent of the ag district is to protect agricultural lands and lands consisting of natural growth from incompatible land uses in order to preserve land best suited to agriculture uses and land in which the natural environment should be continued, and to limit residential, commercial, and industrial development to those areas where they are best suited for reasons of practicality and service delivery. So the intent of an ag district is to protect agricultural lands and land uses as agriculture. Now, I could read you the definition of agriculture, but I think you guys probably have read it a number of times. It includes the raising of animals. Okay? That's the intent of an ag district, and that's where I'm trying to put this swine finishing unit. Part of this, the nutrients from this barn, one of the fields that I'm spreading it on is right by my house. It's not like I'm gonna spread it next to somebody else's house. I plan on using the fields right by my house for this barn. Now, Andrea, I don't take your health issues lightly either, but there's also feedlots to the east, west, north, and south of this house. And as you all know from earlier this summer, the wind can carry the smoke all the way from California to here, and it can surely carry the same pathogens from any one of those small feedlots, AFOs probably, to anybody's house in Yankton County. Wind is very variable, and there are even many larger feedlots down in Nebraska where it could blow up the pathogens the same way. We don't know where they come from. It doesn't say it has to be from this barn. It could be from any feedlot, anywhere. And I never stated that I was going to use this for nitrogen. I use this for crop nutrients. Those nutrients would be tested yearly whenever we put them on. They will be variable rate applied to utilize the best process to utilize all the nitrates that are in the swine nutrients. And I also have to state that nitrates are a big misnomer. Nitrates are a natural and organic compound that comes from the breakdown of plant material. Now, that be from manure, that be from stover out in the middle of the field. It doesn't make any difference. The nitrates are from breakdown of plant material, and they need to be utilized correctly so they don't leach into the soil. And we do that properly with commercial fertilizer or with animal nutrients. And as far as the pictures that Mrs. Gramco handed out to you, I never said it was, the floodplain wasn't close to this barn. But this barn will probably be, I forget the topographical map, but approximately 8 feet higher than the floodplain of this, of where the water was. Now, there's been a lot of talk about quality of life for my neighbors and other people around, and I'm very concerned with their quality of life. I'm also concerned with my quality of life. There's a trade-off between everybody, and if we can treat everybody correctly, it works. Just one person is not more important than anybody else. I don't say I am, and I don't say anybody else is. But the quality of life has to go both ways. And I raise livestock for a living. I raise cows, and when you work with cows, guess what? You smell like cows. If you raise pigs, guess what? You smell like pigs. That's just the way life is. Now, I guess that's probably where I'll quit, or I'll go too far. Thank you very much. If there's any questions, I'll answer.
The idea that your neighbors to the west are definitely against this, I mean, how does that make you feel?
I'm very concerned about that. I've known the Hanson brothers for many years. They're relatives of mine. I get along fairly well with them and have very interesting conversations with them. I'm disappointed that they don't understand why I want to, do this and what their reasonings for doing that. I guess I really can't answer that. It's not something I don't take lightly. I mean, it's concerning, and I wish they could see the impact that I think this is going to have on agriculture for Yankton County and for myself.
Pat, for clarification, a cable barn has to be 1,280 feet from the closest residence?
No, quarter mile, 1320. 1320.
It's a classy. Jay, would you address your feelings that not approving this creates a hardship on you as far as the variance?
Well, if you don't, I guess, yeah, if you don't approve the variance, it will change my operation or what I plan to do with my operation. Like I said, I'm not sorry that I bought land in a floodplain, but I still want to utilize these hog barns for my long-term plans for a fertilizer plan for my farm. It's just something that you don't plan on when you start a business, 40 years ago.
Are your other approved hog barns on that map there?
No, they are not. The other approved hog barn would approximately be, what, 6 miles away from that one? I'd have to think about it for a while.
How close are you to Mission Hill, Jay?
That would be, as the crow flies, approximately 1.5 miles.
What's your feelings on the lagoon there?
I live next to, or I own property around the lagoon in Mission Hill. And if I had my druthers, this would be below the lagoons in Mission Hill, but I can't put it there. Just for that reason, it's in a floodplain. I meet all the setbacks there, but I can't put it there because of the floodplain. I deal with the lagoon in Mission Hill twice a year. It smells twice a year. Sometimes it doesn't smell very good, and sometimes it, it doesn't really bother you. It's just something else that we deal with, along with my neighbors to the south of me that have feedlots. They're not big feedlots. They're 2 AFOs down there south of me, and if the weather is right in the summertime, it gets rather strong at my house, and they're a mile away. But I live in an ag district, and I raise animals, and so do they.
So if you would move that building to run north and south instead of east and west, and move it to the, I think it's north, you could get it in the 330-foot setback and 150-foot setback.
Well, for one thing, I want to do a curtain barn, and those are east-west originations, okay? I feel, I feel that is the best consideration for the livestock that are in that barn. Would I do something different? I don't know what I could do. I could probably put in 2 1200s, but I still wouldn't be in the setback, and that would still move me closer to my neighbors.
But if you put it north and south, you'd have to put in
You'd have to put in a tunnel vent barn or a vent barn of some sort.
And have you looked at that?
Have I looked at that? Again, that's not the type of barn I want to put up. I mean, it's a preference thing. Yeah. Okay, I've been inside.
Between a different type of barn, or a different type of ventilation aspect, and you could meet your setbacks, would that be better than that this doesn't meet the setbacks and you're asking us to give you a variance? If you could have a barn, this is a supposition on my part. If you could have a barn that went north and south and you met the setback requirements, is that better than not having a barn that doesn't? What if the planning commission says you don't meet the setbacks, then you don't get a barn? So I'm asking, is there a different alternative that can be looked at? I mean, that should be yes or no almost answer.
I mean, I'll look at any variation to be able to put this in there. I don't think that would calm the opposition any. Just on my opinion, I don't think that would calm any opposition to that situation. I've been in enclosed barns. I've looked at enclosed barns. Personally, for me, I think the curtain barns are a better fit for the animals. And if somebody's raising animals or has raised animals, and even if I hire somebody else to work these barns, my first consideration are the animals in that barn. That's just the way I am. It doesn't make any difference what animals I'm raising. I would always be cognizant of the welfare of the animals. So to say I wouldn't look at something different, I would look at something different, but I think this is the best type of barn there is.
Do you know the difference in the price between the two barns?
The tunnel vent barn and a open curtain barn, I don't think there's a whole lot of difference. I do not know the price though. It'd be more. It'd be more.
I think the operating
And the operating would be more per month because you're running the fans all the time. Yeah.
Excuse me, what was that?
The operating costs for electricity to run the fans would be more. Mm-hmm.
So if you'd move this thing 150 plus whatever that is, maybe 170 foot north, and and 75 foot east, you'd be within.
No, I don't think so. I can move it up to about 300 feet to the east and still be out of the floodplain, as long as I am 150 feet from the right-of-way. That's about as far as I can get there without interfering with the floodplain and the amount of dirt that I'd have to move.
So you're proposed, you could do the whole 330 feet off the right of way?
Off the property line.
Off the
It's
west
600
property.
Yep, 660 off the property line.
Right.
You can't get that.
I can't get there.
Or you'd be in the right dead center in the middle of the property.
Yeah, right. Yep. Yeah, then that's where we hit the floodplain.
That's where you.
Yep. Yep. And there again, if I move it further east, I move it closer to my neighbors.
How wide is that? What is that, 660 by 660? Or 1320?
It's 1320. Yep, it's 1320. It's a quarter mile. It's a 40.
Dead center,
Yeah.
one dot. Because you look at a property to the north, property line north, and property line west, have to be 660.
Yep.
So without the floodplain, we could have stuck right in the center.
Right.
No, not unless it's
Well,
a
I could've-
pinpoint, not unless it's a pinpoint.
That's true too.
Yeah.
We got 330 on the other side.
You got the building dimensions in there also.
So you got a 400-foot building, so we don't have enough room to do it.
No.
Yeah, you'd be closer to the.
No, it's on a 40 acre field. Trying to put a hog barn in with these setbacks is just about impossible. Yeah, that's where the problem lies. Yep, that's where the problem lies, and that's why I'm asking for the variance. You know, if I owned that whole 160, we wouldn't have any problem. If I would have traded from one side of the road to the other, I wouldn't have a problem. But I only have a 40 there, and that's where I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place.
And there's no place on the sections south of you?
No, that not and meets topographical. No, I mean when you start talking 400 feet long, it's a long barn, and there's a lot of, it doesn't take much variation in the hills to make it a lot of work.
That's where we have our problem with our setbacks. It's just, we own 40 acres of land, you can't put a barn in it. There's something wrong with that.
That's,
And you say there's a pivot on that section south of you?
There's a pivot on the section to the
How
south
does
of me.
that
Yes,
pivot work with that farmstead down?
it only goes around about 3/4 of the way.
set at the northwest corner of it.
Is the well next to the farm plate?
Yeah, the well's next to the farm place. The pivot point is probably in the northwest corner of that farm place.
On the section you're in, it looks like that land to the west of you is looking pretty valuable right now. At 40.
Because there'd be a barn land.
Well, if you had
Yeah, both of them, you could put a barn there.
Add the two, you go across it, you got it.
Some people would say it decreased the value.
Yeah. No.
I know, I'm just.
Would actually move it away from the other neighbors more.
Well, then you move it closer to the other neighbors, to the west. So,
Well, but you're
yeah.
still not gonna.
You're still not going to be a quarter mile, but
Yeah, all you
Setbacks are the problem.
yeah, the setbacks are the problem. That's just, the setbacks are the issue.
You don't
I mean,
have to worry
that's,
about the setbacks if you own that other quarter.
yeah. So,
You have to own a quarter to build a barn though.
yeah, there's a lot of investment in a quarter and a lot of,
$1 million land to build a barn.
Thank you, Mr. Cox.
Okay.
We'll bring it back to the Planning Commission for discussion. Let's send it a public comment period. I do want to address one thing. So, Ms. Whitmer, anyway, you brought up a comment that you weren't sure why it got moved. Just to clarify for everybody that it was a administrative error that Pat Garrity admitted that he made, that when he was posting these signs. So at the last meeting, what was done was it was given the option to every applicant, I think there was 8 applicants that night. Anyway, all 8 of them had the opportunity to go forward with their project with notification that it could be appealed, or if they wanted to have it reposted for a second hearing. So if there was 8, 7 of them went forward with a notice that it could be appealed, and as far as I know, there were no appeals on any of the last meeting. So then, Mr. Cutts asked for a continuation to tonight. So that, for everybody, that's how that happened. It was an inadvertent error on Pat, different calendar year or something. But anyway, that's how we got to where it got moved to tonight. So I just wanted to clarify that for everyone. Discussion back to the Planning Commission.
Can I ask a question to Brad? MBS?
Yes.
Brad, in that hog barn that's north of Emming, or Ethan, is that enclosed or is that a curtain barn? Isn't that 6,400 head?
Which barn are you talking about for sure?
Well, it's
North of Ethan?
There, just on 37.
Oh, right along Highway 37?
Yeah.
It's actually south of Ethan, about a mile.
Yeah.
That's a 2,400 head nursery facility.
That's a blue one.
Yeah, it's blue and gray in color. That's a 2,400 head nursery facility. But there's also, just to give you some procs, there's 33, I think probably about 4,000 head about a mile west of, or mile east of that facility as well. And those are all curtain barns, about a mile and a quarter east and just a touch south. So.
As far as Brad, another question. So far as discharging anything as far as dust or odor or anything from the barn, is there any difference in volume dissipated or moved with the curtain barn as opposed to fans?
Well, in a tunnel vent barn, you're going to draw the air through them all the time, and you're going to move the air across them. Where in a natural vent barn, you're going to get what Mother Nature gives you. So I guess I would, when you, it moves, and so quite honestly, I'd say when you think about that, the fact that in a tunnel vent barn, you always have to move air. It always has to go across with fan force. You're gonna have more discharge on an everyday basis than you would potentially on a natural vent, because it's going to be, they have circulation fans in a natural vent barn, so when it seems those days are few and far between in South Dakota, but when it does get calm, they can create air movement.
Yeah, just for the comfort of.
For the comfort of them. Then they use, there's mister systems and so forth that help with the cooling of the livestock.
In your experience, are these barns dusty like I grew up around hogs that?
Well, again, they do things with the feed. They put additives in the feed, typically an oil, a soybean oil or corn oil, to help with that, to keep the dusting down, because it's obviously, if it's dust, you're not putting that through the animal as far as feed goes. So you don't want the feed to create a lot of dust. Not as there dander off the animal. Sure, there is, just like any species of animal.
So it's the feed that causes the majority of the dust?
Oh, I guess I can't speak to that in percentage wise. I wouldn't want to.
In your experience, it's probably the dirt on the ground that they're moving around.
Sure.
Wouldn't you think that an animal running out free range in dirt would cause more dust, wouldn't it?
Oh, I would sure think so, but there's a lot more acres required when you do that kind of information, sir.
Sorry, are we done with that question?
Yes.
Aren't we here basically talking about the variance?
Yes.
Request, which has little or nothing to do with building the feed and its location. And in the past, we've set a precedence, I believe, that if there's a neighbor that objects, that's within the setback distances, we usually do not approve variance. I can't think of any that we've done, maybe one me, as long as these Hansons have said they want nothing to do with that building sitting there, we've got to work with getting it set back away from that property to set it up so it can be passed. And if we can't be on that property, then I guess I think we have to vote down the variance request. The ordinance says all these things that they have to do, and it also provides protection for everybody else, and we live by that.
Any other comments from the planning commission?
What was the reason for the denial the first time?
The variance.
Variance. Okay, so Ralph Marquardt about a year ago submitted an application for a 2,400 head unit on the east side of the tree belt, and I was here at that night. That was also denied. Did that ever come back and get approved?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
It got approved to be built within the shelter belt that was existing? No.
Yes.
He moved it. The
We
night
gave-
I was here, they moved the building to the east side of that shelter belt.
Yeah.
East side, yes. It's
The neighbor to the north,
yes.
was here and said he did not object to it.
Well, Marquardt actually was the blocks. That was a 660 on the, what would be the east property line on that, because the west property line was, because we're doing it right now.
Right.
And so he,
Trees were to the west.
and he, yes, and so then if he ran that and did the entire 660, if you remember, then the hearing went that the original proposal was to stay inside the shelter belt. Well, then that forced them, I said, you don't meet the variance, or the setback requirement needs to be 660 from that east lot line. So then he came back and said, push it into that shelter belt. And then we came back with a different design building. It's not quite as long. It's not 400 feet long. It's a little shorter building, a little wider. And then the variance was granted for that of 330 feet. On that
West side of the shelter belt.
on the east property line between because the west side was all owned by Marquardt's. So it's the east property line that was the conflict, and that was the Block family.
So he increased from probably like 200 to 330 or something like that?
And the setback would have been 660 on that lot line because it delineated a different ownership, and we approved a 330-foot variance.
They didn't oppose it either.
And so the building will start at 330 feet on the east side of the property line.
Was
Okay.
there a road, as I recalled, I thought there was a road that went north and south on that.
Let's just go up there.
Oh, there's a gravel road that went.
On the east property, I thought it was divided by a
Okay.
gravel road.
Yeah.
So wouldn't
And
the
then you had-
setback have been 330?
He had one building sitting right here, and then he wanted to put the other one, we denied it, went over
Okay.
west, denied it, went to the west end, and that's where it was taken.
Okay, here it
Went to
is.
the commission, commission put it right behind the one that was originally there.
Okay, these two are here.
Yes.
This is the lot line that was the issue. This lot line is a lot line, but it does not distinguish a different owner. They're both owned by Marquardt.
Right.
So the 660 would have pushed that barn way over to here, which would have pushed it way out here. So his hardship is that we were pushing this out to there, and we already had an established tree belt. Can't we have it in here? And so we got a 330-foot variance from this lot line to here. And now the building will start here. So that was granted. And then, and we were not challenged on that variance. I have to say, this practice of conditional use variance is being conducted in Brookings County. It's being conducted in Davison County. Davison County just did one last week. We conversed again over this one. It is conducted, if I want to compare counties that did the same zoning ordinance as we did, which would be by District 3, which would be going up into, basically they run along the river there. Bonham does it. They are a common, it is a practice that the state's attorneys have said, we have not seen it lose. Now, that's what I'm seeing right now. I'm being advised by that point, and the other counties are doing that. And so the discussion that we have mostly is what comes first. do we do a variance first, or do we do a conditional use first? We in Yankton County have always done the conditional use first, because we feel if we want the use, if we can't approve the use, there's no sense in doing a variance. Davidson County is saying, we think we should do the variance first, because if you don't do a variance for them, there's no reason to do a conditional use. So I think that's definitely a chicken or egg thing. And the state's attorneys are agreeing that's where we're at with that. So either way we can go, proceed forward. But what we're doing is the variance. You cannot do what you would, remember, conditional uses are conditions, and variances are always on physical attributes: the size of the building, the size of the lot, the feet away, the yard setback, that stuff, physical things. That's what the variance is based on. We can't do a variance on whether or not we would come in and say, or do a conditional use on a yard setback and say, why don't you do it somewhere between 6 and 7 feet? That we don't do that. That's true. We can't do that. But they're two different entities. So I just want to make that clear. And so far, the legal entities are standing behind it and saying, either way you go with that, because we had that discussion today. So that was a 330 variance. We're currently doing that barn right now, and that is a little different design.
How close was it initially? We increased 2 feet.
He wanted to come in with a 400-foot barn, which pushed it about over to here.
Right, so it's probably 100 or something like that?
Yeah.
In line with those other ones.
And so
But this situation is different because they already had a hog unit there. They had an existing shelter belt on 2 sides of it. They were, you know, were they creating?
You know, the hardships, the issues that their hardship is that why are we going to make a bigger area for the confinement area? Why do that in the longer picture is a worse situation than having it into an area like that where, and then for them it was transportation, it was a lot of other things that are, yes, that's caused by them, but that was an existing operation started in the, we'll say early 70s. Yes, you're right, that hardship was that factor.
That's did state that he would be willing to fight it to the east maybe to get to 330.
You need 660 on that side.
But you need 660. We didn't have the pressure we have on that one that we have on this one. This and the other thing with this barn is again, you had already in place a production facility. That's huge. That's a big piece. We're coming in brand new with this one.
And that was in place prior to zoning?
Yes. Yes, all those were. The thing that I want to emphasize here, because I don't think it's going to go away in the future, even, whatever we may go at, we have an issue here. I don't know how we deal with it, where we'll go with it, but when we have taken and eliminated those kinds of properties in Yankton County for a Class E on up, I think there's an issue there that we're going to have to address in the future.
Those kinds of properties, you mean?
Anything 40 acres or smaller, we have basically eliminated any Class E or larger operations in, and it is an ag district. There's a thing called takings, and we do have to be careful. We can't ban things with zoning. We have to regulate things with zoning, but we can't ban them. I certainly agree with what Don said earlier. I'm not taking anything away what was said earlier. We have a very unique situation here. Until we learn or have a discussion and go through the comprehensive plan and understand how we're going to deal with those acreages, we could get, this is an action that could be legal.
The 40 you referred to, though, is really the 20 when you take out the floodplain. So, I mean.
Very
really,
much. Very much.
Yeah. So
again,
really when you look at it, you have to ask yourself, is that really the highest and best use of that property? I mean, it's.
Yep. Going back to that piece, again, I just want to be careful. What do you base variances on? If you take a look at the variance issue there, when you look at, I believe it's like 6 or about 3 or 4 in your manual there underneath the variances, topography is one of the things that are listed. That's beyond their control. Even though they knew it when they bought it, topography is one of the things they listed. Floodplain is in the same vein. Those are, I'm not promoting this per se because there's some other issues with this site, but there is a hardship there. There is some real issues there. So we have some validity to that. But on the same token, as Don has said, we also have some other issues in this site too. But this is a Class E operation. We only go down to Class F.
Mr. Chairman, if I could. You were saying, is there any other options that I would have? If you guys want to stay at this 660, I can put in a double 12 and be one right north of the other and meet setbacks if I get the right-of-way variance. Because it has to be that far south to, so I don't deal with the floodplain. And I can still meet all my setbacks. So there is another option. It basically just,
How big is it, 1,200?
it goes, instead of 400 feet long, it's 200 feet long and two of them.
It's two buildings.
Two buildings, 200 feet long.
You can get 660 feet away from the west.
I think I can, yes.
You'd be really close to the floodplain, wouldn't you?
That's the issue. That's the issue. You know, we were looking for different avenues. And it's not the best place for the barn, but it'll fit, and I can do it that way. So there's another option for you, if you know, that's something that you guys would consider.
You'd be okay with the 330 from the west too, like we gave to,
I would be fine with the 330 from the west.
like we gave to Mr.
Yeah, I wouldn't have a problem with that. Yeah, I can make that work.
And then you're still reasonably far away from the
Reasonably far away from the floodplain.
If we're gonna change the conditions of what he applied for, he would have to reapply to address, like, he could table this proposal, and then he'd have to reapply for the other conditions that he has just presented.
Like the 330, you mean, he'd have to reapply?
Well, if
Let's-
the barns instead of one, or
212?
You can do two different things. You can do a decision and then end this now, or you can do a continuance and lay out specific requirements that you'd like him to come back to and what specific date you want him to come back to, or you can do a table, which would effectively say, until I see a different plan, we're going to table this.
So we can't decide on a plan that would move it farther away from
I can't do that, not on this, we have a site plan we got to review, I got to make sure that there's too many details in that site plan that we have to have in our hands. I agree with what he's saying, we've looked at those possibilities, but I do not have a site plan. Whichever, you got those three options.
Draw that out with the floodplain, see if it works in 660.
Yep.
You were saying 330, give it 330, but you have to have the approval of the adjacent landowners even to do that.
Right, but it's a lot more reasonable than 75 feet, and that's what we.
Right, I understand what you're saying.
If he comes back with a different proposal, we have the three options you can do. Okay, so continuance, make a decision now and start a new application, a continuance, which then set a date and what you're looking for him to do, or table it. And then that tabling can say, until I see this application have these specific things, we will hold.
And give him time to talk to the neighbor.
Again,
so right now we're at three different possibilities. So do we have a motion for either of the three?
When's our next meeting, Pat? October 12th?
I can't book it then. For him, I can't. Our next meeting's October 12th, but I have to, okay, on a continuance, I can do it, but the other two, I have to have notice.
Well,
Continuous, I can do it.
And I think we,
If
But
you
a
set the
continue,
date today.
can a continuance have the changes in it, or is it continuance of the exact same thing we have?
No, what the continuance can do is ask for specific things, like a new site plan.
New site plan, new setbacks, new
Yes.
whatever.
Like a site plan that's 330 feet away from the west.
Then with that, I would make a motion that we have a continuance on this with the understanding that there's a possibility for two barns to replace one barn, and they have to look into those options and
new site plan.
new site plan with the setback, and make sure you know the setback from the floodplain, and still considering the 150 foot off of the right of way. but talk to the neighbors too.
I have it gonna work.
And one of the
That
neighbors
ain't gonna
speak
work?
right now.
Yeah.
We will not go less. You set the setbacks,
660?
660. We will not go less.
Okay, so right now, Butch made a motion to do a continuance, changing site position.
Site position,
Site plan.
setbacks, and to give time to check the distance from this floodplain and see if that will work outside of the 660, and I have my doubts there.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Roll call, Pat?
For the continuance of the J-Cuts application,
Discussion.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, with disregard, Pat, we have to discussion. Discussion is open to plan commission.
So, if we do this continuance, and Mr. Cutts goes to the work of getting an engineer to come in and do his redrawing and recalculating, all those expenses, barring some significant finding that would be contradictory to our ordinance, we're here to say that if that can be done, we would approve. I don't want to be going on a continuance for them and then in 2 weeks or 3 weeks say, now chase this rabbit.
Repeat that, Don. So basically what you're saying is if he can get it within the setback requirements, that we would be willing to approve it, is that correct?
Well, that's good. It doesn't need approval.
Well, I mean, he still.
He
said
still needs 150 foot.
Would need a variance
Off
for
the
the
right.
right of way, to the road.
So we're talking about making him meet all the setback?
No, he said he would maintain the.
What I don't want to see is performance bonds and the laundry list of things that aren't even in the regulation coming up for discussion. I think he's met the requirements. He's not asking for a variance.
Except for the right of way. Isn't that, didn't I hear that right?
Getting a right-of-way variance and a variance from the west.
let's look at our map here, just so we know what we're dealing
Getting a
with.
variance from the west.
That's a right-of-way, and that's a right-of-way, right? Those are both right-of-ways. Those are 330 feet. This is a property line, and that's a property line. Those are both 660. Okay, so with this, with his discussion here, can we, if we have a 150 variance here, which we have offered before off the right-of-way, this is the right-of-way variance, or we work with getting Mr. Cutts to locate it inside that rabbit hole.
We can see that 660 is going to put it right up to the floodplain. Am I not correct, Jay?
This is 330
We'll
off
have to
this.
Look at the floodplain map. It looks a lot narrower than that piece.
Here, it's in the folder.
It's in the folder.
Do you think you can get 660 and not be in the floodplain?
So you have half and a half here. You have 330, you have 660.
And he has to be 660 feet from the 307th Street, right?
From the west.
And he needs to be 150 Street
No.
from Nelson's.
No.
No, other way around.
The other way around.
Other way around.
150 from 307 and 660 from the west.
Here's his center line.
Let's go to the regulations. It's supposed to be 330 and 660.
Right.
So it leaves you a strip in the middle that is gonna be 330 wide.
Yeah, let's make it.
See, that means this
in
here,
accordance with the
if it's off the 150, he might make it right here.
Let them determine.
Here's some setbacks for you guys. Okay, so here's a 330. Look up there and you can see him. He's where am I at there? So I got about, there's a 330 right there. See that's 330.
You mean off the road?
Yep,
Okay.
that's
How
that
far is that off
setback.
the west?
Then you go 660.
Okay, now,
That'd be 660.
660,
This is 330. This is the barns.
See, close.
Put him right in it.
Yeah, you couldn't do it.
we have to come down here. Okay, there's 6,
Well, maybe way down there.
Problem is,
Right
this
here.
gets within 1320.
200-foot barn.
So, do you want to explore that? There's not much room to work with.
No, it's
660, 330. The only way to turn that and get it in there is you could figure it the other way, but puts this corner too close to
I'd
the
like to go
residence.
back to what Don said a few minutes ago. If we lay this out tonight and try to reconfigure this, and then grant him a continuance to get it put together, we're telling him, bring it back, it's approved. Period. No other discussion.
as long as it fits within. Well, then it would be, administrative permit, then it wouldn't matter to us, except for the conditional uses. We wouldn't be, there
Well,
would be no.
no, only the variance, you still need the 150 variance off the right of ways.
Oh,
Yes.
Okay, you can have that.
The one from 330 to 150 off the right of way.
See, if you go to 150 now, you go to 150, and suddenly it pulls it way down here. Let's go to 150. Okay, so here it is way down here now. This is where the barn can be. Okay, now comparing that to the floodplain,
But the floodplain does go farther east, so it would keep getting away from the floodplain.
yes.
This here brings you right down to where it would be.
Where's the barn?
So Butch has got some work right here, and the barn he has, would run this way, would fit in there with the 150. If we had the,
660 divides that in half, east to west.
yeah,
Go 660 from the left there, Pat, again. Okay, yeah, no, down and down. One,
okay.
Along through
yeah, about there. 660.
Go from that corner, 660 and
Okay.
across.
About
You go
there.
all the way up, and that's
Okay, there it is.
And then that would, he'd just need a 150 variance.
That's it with the 150 variance. It fits in that
But
little
then,
area.
will the
Well, but that
200
leaves, that only leaves, Dan, that only leaves you this wedge here to put it in. If you orient the barn north-south to fit it in that wedge and stay out of the floodplain, now this here northeast corner is too close to the property, to the resident.
You couldn't even fit a
Unless he
200-foot barn
goes
in
with
there.
two 1200s, they're smaller.
Well, there's 200
Well, but
feet.
he can't turn them, they gotta be in this configuration right here, that shade.
And then
North and south, to
the
even
north
get it
end
on
is,
there.
Yeah, he doesn't want
now the
it
north
south,
end
but
is
they're
too
curtain
close to
barns.
this residence.
Well, the only thing, I've seen some curtain barns where they had louvered fences outside where the wind comes in and pushes it through. Saw some up in Minnesota.
I don't think a 200-foot barn would fit one.
The whole 40 acres, you can't put a barn there.
200 foot, 400.
I don't know whether it can or not, that's an engineer's problem to determine, it's not my call. All I'm saying is, if he can make it fit the ordinance.
If he can make it fit the ordinance, except for the 150-foot setback off to the right of way. That's something we
So
could
what are
probably
you
work with.
what are you gonna allow? We need to tell him what we're gonna allow.
That means 660 from the west, giving him no variance there, but 150 from the south, which is the right-of-way setback. We give him that.
You can go 150 off the east side too, but it doesn't do him any good because the floodplain. You gotta be out the floodplain. And the residential 1320.
That's where it'll be close.
That's where it's gonna be a bugaboo. You could put it in there except for that.
So we have a motion.
We have a motion, we've had discussion, do we want to vote on the motion?
We need to.
So we need to vote on the motion. And
What's
then
the
that's,
motion again?
well, I will reread it, that would be for continuance, basically to meet the setback requirements except for the south right of way.
To see if you can get the setback requirements met
From the west.
out of the floodplain, off of the west 660,
And 1320 from the house.
from any resident.
Yeah, any residential.
Has to do. Yeah.
Roll call, Pat.
Wait a minute. Next, can you have that done by October 12th, Jake?
Yeah.
I can't get him in front of you, no. Okay, excuse me, I'm sorry. Yes, you have to set a date. You have to set a date. I'm sorry, I got three things going on here.
Do you have enough
So in a
time?
continuance, you have to set a date.
He'd be willing to try to get it done by October 12th, he said.
Okay, he said he
When
could
is
do
that?
You can sure find out.
Is that our next meeting?
That's the next normal meeting.
Roll call, Pat.
No, it's the 11th.
Is it the 11th or the 12th?
Oh.
That's really pushing you.
Yeah, it's the 9th of October.
Is that a yes or a no?
I can do it.
Okay.
Till the 8th?
So
It's
on
actually
the
the
9th, the October 9th, we'll look at a new site plan, a new barn setups, and meet the 660s and offer a 150 row setback on the south property line.
And that, you're solid with the explanation on the hardship for doing this. You're solid with all the other counties around are doing that.
Yes, if they have these kinds of situations, they are doing this, and yes, they are doing variances and conditional uses at the same time for pork facilities.
8th, 9th. Tuesday.
Are you ready?
Yep, he's ready.
Becker,
Yes.
Kretzinger,
Yes.
Gudall,
Yes.
Vogelstedt,
Yes.
Koenig,
Yes.
Kettering,
Yes.
Duffmiller,
Yes.
Welch.
Yes.
Carried.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is administrative. Actually, next item is public comment, if anyone's signed up on the, oh, I'm ahead one whole step. 745, Yankton County Amendment Resolution, first reading of Article 17, Section 1715. Yankton County Plan Commission, Yankton County, South Dakota.
I'll read it.
Okay. Let's go.
Okay. In front of you, you have a resolution for a amendment change on Article 17, and it's Section 1715, which is the Board of Adjustment voting requirements in Yankton County Ordinance Number 16. And we'll read through this, but we'll start here. Whereas South Dakota Codified Law 11-213 allows Yankton County to establish zoning regulations. Whereas the Yankton County zoning ordinance number 16, establishes zoning regulations in Yankton County. And whereas in section 1809 of the Yankton County zoning ordinance number 16, gives Yankton County Planning Commission powers to recommend amendments to the Yankton County zoning ordinance number 16. And whereas Yankton County Planning Commission hereby finds in order to establish a simple majority vote by the Board of Adjustment for conditional use permits as authorized by South Dakota Codified Law 11-2-53 and South Dakota Codified Law 11-2-59. The following regulations are intended to promote and preserve the health, safety, and welfare of all residents in Yankton County. Section 715, Board of Adjustment voting requirements. The Board of Adjustment shall, upon a vote of 2/3, or 4 out of 5, of the full membership of the Board of Adjustment, overrule the zoning administrator or grant variance to the terms of this ordinance. The Board of Adjustment shall, upon a vote of a simple majority of the full membership of the Board of Adjustment, grant conditional uses to the terms of this ordinance. The original reading was, as you can see, this cross-out part there is that it used to say, it would say, or currently says overrule the zoning administrator, grant conditional uses or variances from the terms of this ordinance. And we're going to change that to the latter sentence, which will be, we're proposing the change. The Board of Adjustment shall, upon a vote, a simple majority of the full membership of the Board of Adjustment, grant conditional uses to the terms of this ordinance. Now therefore be resolved that Yankton County Planning Commission hereby recommends, in order to establish a fair and efficient process for conditional use permits in Yankton County and to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the Yankton County, recommend amendment adoption of Article 17, Administrative Procedure and Enforcement, Section 1715, Board of Adjustment voting requirements, to amend the Yankton County zoning ordinance, ordinance number 16. So to refresh you a little bit, 11.253 is the powers of the Board of Adjustment. These comes from codified law, in which that's how we write our ordinance. That's where we get our authority to write the ordinance, and that's how we come to our determinations, and that is to hear and decide appeals regarding the administrative official that is in the enforcement. It's also authorized upon appeal in specific cases such as variances from terms of the ordinance that will not be contrary to the public interest or owing to a special condition, a literal enforcement of the provisions of the ordinance will result in unnecessary hardship, and so that the spirit of the ordinance is observed and substantial justice done. And then thirdly, this is what it was, or it says here and determine conditional uses as authorized by the zoning ordinance. The uses shall be determined by affirmative vote of the president and voting members of the Board of Adjustment at a percentage specifically set within the zoning ordinance. So the state law says those present, but in our zoning ordinance, we say full membership. Okay? So that's what we say there. Now, I'm just read through this. So what we're going to say here is we still want full membership, but it'll be simple majority for the conditional use permits. There's some discussion with that. Now, 11.259, this was adopted in 2016. Okay, so this is the most recent one that the state has presented to us, and this is 2/3 majority required. The concurring vote of 2/3 of the members of the Board of Adjustment is necessary to reverse any order, requirement, decision, or determination of any administrative official, or to decide in favor of the applicant upon any matter upon which it is required to pass under any such ordinance, except as to conditional uses, where the county has chosen to adopt a different standard as set forth in subdivisions 11.253-3, or to the effect of any variation in the ordinance. So this authority here is giving us that authority to do the simple majority for the conditional use permit, and that was done in 2016. Now, let's talk about conditional uses versus variances. Remember, conditional uses are listed. They're listed uses. And so we're acknowledging that they will happen and occur in that district. Why do we want them to be conditions or conditional uses? Is so that you can monitor those things. You can make sure they have enough parking. You can make sure their lights are appropriate. You can make sure that their barns are in the right place. You can make sure that they have odor buffers and that type of thing. That's why we put conditions on there. It isn't to say no, it's to put conditions on. Variances, on the other hand, are physical, measurable things. What we want, circumstances, conditions, and those are measurable. And so really, a variance is very, very, very black and white. It's either 10 feet or it's 12 feet. It's either 12 feet tall or it's 20 feet tall. But in a condition, odor is what? And so there are different thought processes. And so there is not, as of our current ordinance, says that they would be 2/3. But even the state recognized and changed the law on this end that they're different processes. And so several of the counties have been doing this. Not all of them have. There is one discussion out there about this, and that is, and I'm not going to say the terms right, but there's two different ways that when you go into lawsuits, and you have one called a certiorari, and then you have the other one said mandamus. And certiorari makes you go through, and I'm not saying it right, but they will go back and look at the evidence that was presented to the planning or to the Board of Adjustment only. That during that hearing, when you do it as a supermajority, because you're being quasi-judicial. But when you start shifting over to simple majority, we start having some issues there, and the quasi-judicial starts being debatable, and then they can go to mandamus. And mandamus means that you can be taken to a lawsuit in which they can come and actually change the rulings, ask us to make us change the rulings. And so there's more lawyer discussion on that, but the other counties have said we still feel they still went ahead with that and did the switch.
So the big difference there, as you said,
on the lawsuit, so to speak.
Yes, so the way it is with the supermajority, since it's quasi-judicial Board
Yes.
of Adjustment, they only look at the material presented to the Board of Adjustment.
Correct.
On the other one, then, on the other hand, they go back and look at
They can look at anything.
everything that we've had tonight and anything that changed.
They can bring in new evidence. They can bring in different evidence. It's a different
The added,
process.
Not just the evidence that was presented.
Right. I don't know if that's a detriment. I don't know that answer. I see other counties doing it. I had a very long and good discussion with District 3's manager, Todd Kays, and Todd helped me do this part, and we kept it very simple. And Todd is instrumental in working with the other counties regarding the change in this ordinance. And he stated that for the purposes of what we're looking at and under the conditional use permits, this is more proper to do it this way than the way it has been done, because it is a conditional use permit. Because they are listed uses. We are allowing agriculture. We are, you know, it's listed uses. So with that thought, there's your recommendation in front of you. The Planning Commission does one reading. This would be your,
One more question.
and then you'd have
If,
two at the board.
The supermajority remains the requirement, and the Board of Adjustment has a member missing. Does that mean that we can't hear that?
That's kind of where we're going. We have to do the same kind of thing. I think we have to offer the option. You have that applicant has the chance of not getting a supermajority based on absence. And if then that applicant has to make a decision.
Would it still be a valid CUP if the supermajority wasn't present and you still had 3 of 4?
Simple majority. So out of the 5, I need 3, period. That's a simple majority.
But
Yep.
if it remained the way it was,
I'd need 4.
before, so if you had a member missing, out of a 5-member Board of Adjustment, and somebody was missing,
Still need 4.
it'd have to be unanimous if everybody's still there,
Still need 4, yep.
correct?
Yes,
And if you had
correct.
3 of 4, it wouldn't work.
Right. And if 2 are missing, we don't even have a meeting.
Yeah.
You'd have a quorum, but we couldn't have a Board of Adjustment meeting. And we may have to talk, well, we're also going to have to be informative now because, yes, we have to have a supermajority under the current conditions. Now, if you go to the other one, then 3 votes is the key. No, and it still has to be 3 votes. It's the simple majority. It isn't the attendance. It's the full membership. And both laws stated that. We have to go with full membership. So attendance is really critical, obviously. That's for the Board of Adjustment. So what you're voting on is that the zoning administrator still has to have supermajority. The variance still have to have supermajority in line with state law, but we've been allowed to change the ruling and go simple majority within the conditional use permits. And would that be conducive to our system?
We're taking a vote tonight.
Yes, we can.
I'm
So,
just voting to pass it forward to the Board of Adjustment, or to the Commission, right?
yes, we do one reading. We do first reading, and it's 1. And then I go through the process of continuing advertising. You have to do 2. And that have to be 2 separate meetings. So the Board of Adjustment does 2, actually the County Commission does 2 readings.
So this is the only reading we have?
Yes,
here.
this is the only one you get. Yes,
The second reading for the adjustment.
yep. It's called first and second reading for the County Commission. Yes, has to be 2 meetings. And each of them advertised. Any questions for me?
I make a motion that
We have to do a public comment. Sorry. Any other questions for me? I certainly can answer anything afterwards, after the public comment, too.
As we go to public comment on this ordinance change, is there anyone who would like to speak in favor of this? Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak in opposition? Name, address.
You just want to come over to my house.
Sure. Help me teach school.
I am Christy Schultz. I live at 44121 Southwest Jim River Road. I am vehemently opposed to the change. This ordinance has served us well for 17 years. There is no reason to change it now. What this does is it restricts people's ability to appeal any decisions made by this group, the county commission. It is making it very difficult, very expensive for them to exercise their rights to appeal a decision. Also, I just feel that it's a power grab. This is a blatant abuse of power by the county commission. The county commission, and specifically the zoning board, has weeded out all of the people who have opposed them on any CAFO permits, starting with Cindy Gunther, myself, Art Katalik, Gary Silliason, and Dan Klemish. Anybody who opposes a CAFO, they vote them off the board. They will not accept any dissenting, intelligent people on this board. If you don't agree with them, they get rid of you. We need to have 4 out of 5 votes for a conditional use permit, because a conditional use permit is a big decision. This is not, I want my house 15 feet closer to the road because of topography. This is a major change to the environment or the neighborhood when you're talking about a conditional use permit. This is not a decision to be taken lightly. And I would ask that you leave it as it is now. And I recall also something that they did that I consider an abuse of authority is when this whole thing started about 3 years ago when we got new commissioners in, they established a dairy overlay board, and I was a member of that board and a number of other people. And just as soon as things started going in a different direction, meaning that we were started talking about hogs rather than just dairy, because there were virtually no dairy permits. And how many dairy permits have we approved in the last 3 years? None. How many hog permits have we approved? Way too many. All right? So they knew from the very beginning this was all about hogs. So the minute that the board said, okay, let's be honest about this, this is about protein production, it's not about dairies, there's no dairy production processing facility within a close enough distance for a large dairy to be located here, they dissolved the board. They not only wouldn't listen to us, they said, okay, I'm taking all the toys and get out of my sandbox because I don't want to listen to you. You're taking away the last of our rights we have left. And I think it is totally unacceptable. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who'd like to speak in opposition to the change of ordinance? Closes public comment. Any discussion on the planning commission?
I'd move we approve it.
We got a motion.
Oh, we do?
We have a motion. Didn't we already have a motion?
Well, I did, that was before discussion.
What discussion?
Or public input.
Go ahead, sorry.
Who?
You.
I move we approve it.
Second.
I'll second that.
Roll call, Pat.
Gressinger?
Yes.
Rudolph?
Yes.
Koenig?
Yes.
Millen?
Yes.
Becker?
No.
Kettering?
Yes.
Goldenstedt?
No.
Welsh?
No.
Motion carried. 5-3.
That takes us to the 8 o'clock item on agenda. If there's anyone that signed up for public comment, they have 3 minutes to bring up an item or point. I don't think there was anyone. With that, the last item would be
Make a motion to adjourn.
is there-
Second.
all in favor of Adjourning. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? How come no one ever wants to stay late?